Yeah, exactly.
Not recreate them, but like
Just
repitch them.
have fun with it, man. There's no script.
I need a script.
Do you want me to write you a script?
No, maybe.
Welcome. You are entering a strange realm. A realm of what ifs. What if movies, television shows, and video games were better, worse, bizarrer, or downright different? What might they look like? Find out on today's episode of Cinecasters.
Welcome to the Cinecasters, the show where we watch movies and TV shows and then talk about them and repitch them back to one another. I am Alyssa, and today I'm joined by the Janglez, as always.
I think it was just the way you phrased that was like a question. The show where we pitch them back to one another? Like, do we? Yes, we do.
Yeah,
That's what we've always done. Almost 100 episodes of it.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty exciting.
And today we are looking at...
We are looking at Megamind.
Yeah, we're looking at Megamind, which is weird because we just finished September.
Yeah.
And then you were sort of like, Megamind, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And then I remembered that it's a superhero movie.
It's more of like a villain redemption story.
Yeah, it's still superheroes, but yeah, why did you pick this one?
I don't know.
Great, good. Let me dissect that for a second.
Well, okay. So I remember it being like a really goofy movie, and I always I thought I remembered it differently. This is one of those things where I watched it and I thought I remembered things differently, and as I was going along, I was like, oh wait, that's not what happened. This is actually what happened.
So when you pitched it, when you wrote your pitch, did you rewrite your pitch to be what you thought you remembered?
No.
Oh, I was gonna say that would have been really interesting. If you're like, this is the version
I'm actually
I
kind of worried that we might have been on the same page for the pitch, so yeah.
Really? Why do you think we were on the same?
Yeah, I'm worried because I think I chose something that's really interesting, but I also it's one of those things where it's like, oh, this could actually be really smart if you like changed how it's done.
Yeah, I don't know. See, whenever we pitch something, I'll often think like maybe I did something that was very similar, but I think there's only been a couple times where Nate and I, or either you or I, have done something that's like incredibly similar, but it's still not that similar. Like, there are so many different ways you can take it, and that's the fun part about like talking about your pitches, is like how you can change up certain things. But let's get into it. Goods and bads. What did you like about this, and what did you dislike about this?
I'm gonna start with a bad. I wish that we knew more about Roxy and her goals.
Mm-hmm.
She's just a reporter, but she doesn't actually do much reporting.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the idea here is that this movie is playing a lot with tropes.
Oh, definitely.
Because we get, at the very beginning, we get that sort of like classic Superman intro.
Yeah.
Like when we did that for September back, that was the first movie we did for September, was the first Superman, which was, despite being long, is also where we get a lot of that, the visuals behind that, the Superman origin, even though it's all done in the comics, but you know, you put the baby into the pod and they go up, but there's two of them, and that's what, you know, it was really interesting to see how that kind of thing.
At least they didn't spend 20 minutes destroying the planet.
Oh my god, gratuitous. Yeah, they sort of just go in through it and do the intro, like going through it, and then we get him grown up, and then immediately we're almost there. The voiceover I did think was a little unnecessary.
Yeah, I don't think that we really needed to hear like, oh, what was that? I didn't catch that. Like, okay, no one did.
Yeah, well, I meant like the part where he's like falling off the building.
Yeah.
The idea is...
Well, I think that was another trope.
Yeah, it's supposed to be set up like, oh, he's the villain, he's just been defeated and stuff like that. But I didn't think it was really all that good, especially because later on when we come back to that moment, it isn't like they did a freeze frame again where he's like falling and he's like, and here we are again. Like, I've lost the girl, you know, blah, 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 you know, but you were all wrong about me. Like, it turns out I want to be the good guy. And then he actually like, wait a second, now I've got an idea. They just sort of were like, and now he's falling and he fixed it.
Yeah.
It's not a moment of reflection so much. I didn't really enjoy that too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also think Roxy's face is gross.
Yeah, it's weird.
There's
A lot
something-
of the faces in this movie were just like, they weren't quite as like weird as the Uncanny Valley, but they were still like uncomfortable to look at.
Yeah, there's just like something weird about them. Like the proportions were way off. Like it's weird because Megamind looks the most normal because he's the most unnormal.
Yeah.
So you're familiar with the Uncanny Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this idea, like the more normal that they try to make them look, the more not normal they look. So like even when he's playing, what's the his alias when he's a human, when he's in his human form? It's like Albert or Roberto.
Albert, something like that.
Something
Yeah,
like
I don't
that.
remember.
Anyway, he looks a little bit weird and off.
Yep.
And then Roxanne's face weirds me out. It's like this plate with a nose on it. It looks like this flat plate with a nose on it.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And then Metro Man's nose is huge and like, I don't know, it's weird.
The whole like face shape is, well, it's like very exaggerated.
Yeah, and I get that they're trying to go for exaggeration, but I felt like the background characters looked much more normal. Even Hal or Titan, his face gets weird.
Yeah.
Jonah Hill does a good job though.
Yeah.
Yeah. As this sort of simp villain. I wouldn't even say simp. He more is like an incel.
Yeah.
Which is why I think this movie is kind of interesting in that like the bad guy is actually like the everyday kind of dude. Like the actual bad guy of this movie is like, this is what actually a lot of people I think would be like if they were given superpowers. They would basically abuse them. And the only reason they don't is because of the structure imposed by government. I mean, now we're getting into Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, right?
Yeah.
And Jean-Jacques Rousseau. This idea that government creates structure.
Yeah. And yeah, well, and I think that it was a really interesting take on like, you know, everybody can be a good guy, but also everyone can also be a bad guy at some point. Like, I think one of the tropes is like, oh, the hero was inside you all along, just like to this average Joe. But in this one, it was the opposite. And I like that, actually.
I think it's an interesting story. My problem is that we spend a lot of time with Megamind. And so we get his story, but we don't get a lot of like why Metro Man is the way he is. We get a little bit at the end where he's like, oh, it's just we're going through the rounds. And I was like, cool, this is kind of neat to have a superhero go through the idea of an existential crisis of like, is this worth it? What's the purpose? What's the point of it all?
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, that kind of makes him a strange villain.
Yeah, because he lets
this happen. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I do like Megamind's sort of arc in this, but I also don't like that Hal is such a one-dimensional villain. Mm-hmm. He becomes this incel, and I think it would have been much more poignant to be like, actually, he's just a regular person who is misguided about the use of his power, or I don't know. There's more there that easily could have been pulled out.
I also think that there could be like some parallels between Hal and Megamind as well. Like they were, both just misguided. Like Megamind got, the bottom of the barrel for everything. He was dropped in a prison and raised there,
which is hilarious.
It was pretty funny, like seeing the inmates being like, "Here's a cop, he's a bad guy."
Which is hilarious, but
it's the same. I think there is a little bit of like a parallel there between the two characters, where if they had different situations to begin with, maybe they would have turned out a little bit different.
So you're going with like a nature
later.
versus nurture kind of thing.
Yeah.
See, I think what's more interesting about that is that Megamind would be like, yo, I grew up in a prison. I had nothing. Right?
Yeah.
He's like, and then Hal is clearly poor. He lives in like this apartment underneath a highway. And it's like, yeah, I didn't even have that. Like that to me is more interesting, to be like, Megamind is like, to the way Megamind grew up is like, you have everything I didn't have. Mm-hmm. And yet you squander it. And now you're given superpowers, even though I gave them to you. You have superpowers and you squander them. Right? And he's like, you don't work towards anything. You work towards your own selfish gains. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas Megamind, clearly, I think what's interesting with Megamind is he's not really working towards his own selfish gains. He's literally just trying to beat Metro Man.
Yeah. And that's the only thing that he's ever really had a goal for.
Yeah, that's the only thing he's ever wanted.
He's lost.
It was to challenge to challenge Metro Man. The problem that I have with this, and I know why they do it in the movie, when Metro Man loses and Megamind wins, it's because Metro Man wanted him to win. Like, Metro Man is so clearly overpowered with that super speed thing that there's no way that Megamind would ever have won.
Yeah.
Which means that Megamind's win, quote unquote, his beating of Metro Man is actually superfluous.
Yeah.
And the movie doesn't...
And
Sorry, go on.
they don't really talk about that, but I think that is interesting to note. I was thinking about it before we called, actually. That, yeah, his win as a villain was actually fake, but his first win for real was when he kind of switched sides and became a quote-unquote better person.
Which is cute, but the movie never calls into question, like, oh, you didn't actually beat Metro Man.
Yeah.
He let you win. Like, it's a false win. And then because to me, I would think if Megamind does have a big ego, which I think he does, then he would be like, but I didn't beat you. You know, there was no winning involved. Therefore, I haven't actually overcome my purpose, my original purpose. Now, I think you could claim like, oh, but in the movie he finds a new purpose because he falls in love, and like, yeah, but also I would have liked to have seen him like actually win. I would have liked to have seen him actually, you know. But I also understand that as a good guy, if Megamind truly is the good guy, and I think he is the good guy at the end. He's always the protagonist, but I think at the end he's like truly a good guy. He can't be a murderer.
No, definitely not.
Because a good guy just can't be a murderer.
If he does, then there's a lot of blurred lines. And
yeah, but in a children's movie, you can't do that.
Gray zone.
Right?
Yeah.
So when we did Good Dinosaur, you told me about how like the character always has to come home.
Yep.
Which I didn't actually know about, but makes perfect sense. I had just never thought about it in that context.
It's like an unspoken rule.
Yeah. In most children's media and even young adult media, you can't have a character that's a murderer. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking even in Full Metal Alchemist, right, which is a very graphic and bloody story, Edward never kills anyone.
Yeah.
He never, and if he makes a point never to do that, and he even makes a point of stopping Winry from killing someone.
Yeah.
Even at a vengeance, like he's like, no, we can't do that. Like, and Harry Potter, Harry never kills anyone. He gets targeted for it. He uses, the Expelliarmus spell to remove people's wands. But even in the end, he doesn't kill Voldemort. He outsmarts Voldemort, and then uses like wand lore, his cunning, and his ability to love to outdo Voldemort. The only one that I can think of where there's an exception to this rule is in the Hunger Games. But the blurred lines in the Hunger Games is inherent in the story, and so it works.
Yeah. Because
there are no good guys or bad guys in the Hunger Games, and President Coin, at the end of the third book, spoilers, is not a good person, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of blurred lines there between like who the good guy is and who the bad guy is, and how Katniss can sort of get away with the murder of Alma Coin because of all the terrible things that Coin did in order to get to that position of power. Not that what's his butt didn't, President Snow, right? But those are all the blurred lines, and that's inherent in the book, and the book plays with those themes quite well and explores them quite well. I don't think Megamind is the place where those kinds of things are going to happen, because it's inherently a children's story about what is good and what is evil. Now, I think it does some really interesting things in terms of like reframing what causes good and evil. And what those things might look like. But
like rejection and
well, I think it's much more nuanced in terms of like what good and evil is and how you deal with it.
Yeah.
The fact that Megamind is a villain who isn't actually a villain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because even his whole goal of trying to overcome Metro Man isn't really. I mean, we could talk about
it's not really evil to overcome a good guy.
Well, I mean, what makes Metro Man a good guy versus Mega Man a bad guy, right?
Yeah.
Mega Man stands for, or Metro Man, not Mega Man. Metro Man stands for, truth and justice and whatever, and they have that whole rant about the skid mark on the underpants of society and the laundry machine and your microwave needs a warranty, that kind of thing.
Yep.
I don't think they said skid mark on the underpants society, but I just wanted to throw that in there. But I think what is interesting about this is I don't see anything wrong with trying to overcome something that seems insurmountable.
Yeah.
There's nothing inherently wrong about that or with that.
Is a person a villain because they try to overcome a great mountain by climbing it?
Is a person a villain if they try to like outdo somebody else's record?
Yeah.
Right? You know, like try to overcome somebody else's.
He never really does anything that's like truly evil until
he kidnaps Roxanne.
Other than kidnap. Well, I mean, kidnapping is not good. Don't do it, kids.
Yeah, don't do it.
But other than that, we never actually see him do anything evil until Megamind. Now you got me calling him Megamind. No.
Mega
what am
Man.
I doing? Metro Man. Yeah. Until Metro Man is quote unquote dead.
Yeah.
Then he starts like robbing banks and doing stupid things. But it all seems really petty compared to the fights that he's been doing before.
Because he has no purpose. So a large part of me thinks that like a big theme in this is purpose.
Yeah.
Right? Searching for purpose. Megamine's purpose was overcoming Metro Man, and without that insurmountable object, he seems lost. So he just is sort of like, well, I have this power to do whatever I want. Right?
Yeah.
So he's like, I have the power to rob these banks and no one can stop me. I have the power to steal the Mona Lisa and no one can stop me. I have the power to do all these things and no one can stop me. But it's meaningless if there's no obstacle, right?
Yeah.
The mountain, you know, if we want to use the Albert Camus metaphor of rolling the boulder up the hill, right? Then as Sisyphus rolls the boulder up the hill, but the mountain, the obstacle of overcoming something is sometimes worth the doing it.
Yeah.
Right? The difference there is become the rolling up the mountain is something you do in perpetuity. Then it becomes boring, and that's what Metro Man talks about. He's like, we just keep doing this over and over again, and it doesn't feel useful. But I often think that purpose is the point of what we're getting at here. I don't think that theme lands super well.
Yeah.
Because there's other things going on, mainly this sort of good versus evil in the movie. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's definitely there. I'm not certain it's really all that great, but...
Well, and yeah, when he is searching for a new purpose, he accidentally makes his new purpose to become the hero.
Yeah, accidentally. He sort of does find a purpose in that way. But I don't know. It's very strange to me because I like, what is his purpose at the end of the movie? If we go with that theme.
Well, he makes it seem like he's trying to out-villain the villain. Because he's like, oh, you're not a super villain because you're not... What was the word he said?
I don't know which part you're at.
Theatrical or something like that. So it makes it like look like he's trying to just out-villain the villain, but he's actually just being good.
See, I actually think out-villain a villain is more interesting than just being like, oh, now I'm the good guy now. Like, as much as I like the theme that this movie has about being like, oh, we're going to subvert expectations of good versus evil based on growing up. What winds up happening isn't like Metro Man becomes the good guy, the bad guy, and Mega Man becomes the good guy. It's literally Metro Man's the good guy who like leads Megamind into becoming another good guy against Hal, who seems like a good guy but was never actually a good guy. Mm-hmm. So what, like, I don't know, what was the purpose here? To me, it's like Shades of Grey would have been more interesting in terms of morality. Like, what if Megamind is actually, like, everyone's like, oh, he's the good guy because he, like, out-villains Titan. So Titan's a villain, and Megamind defeats him by out-villaining him, and everyone's like, whoa, maybe Megamind's actually a hero. Psych, he's not. He just out-villained the villain.
He out-villained the villain, but I also think that he likes the city, whereas Hal, or Titan, whatever you want to call him, was just like, no, I'm angry, so I'm going to destroy the whole city just because I can.
Because he's petty.
Whereas, like, Megamind, he's like, no, I like this city. I'm going to own this city. This is my city now.
Yeah, but I still think the Shades of Grey would have been more interesting there. Instead of being the hero, like, oh, they all praise me because I saved the city, it would be like, no, I'm going to protect the city because I want to rule it.
Yeah.
It almost becomes like Titan is a villain of, like, pettiness. He's driven by passion and mood. Whereas Megamind is like, hang on, you can't rule over anything if there's nothing to rule over.
I almost feel like this would be a really cool now I'm regretting my pitch because I just had a really cool idea.
I'm starting to notice a theme every time we do.
Every time.
And then you'll be like, damn, that's a really good idea. I should have written that.
Yeah. So I think I told you that I've been taking a modern dictatorship class.
You haven't, but that sounds awesome.
It's actually very interesting. We're learning about mostly the Russian, German, and Italian dictatorships of the 1900s. And so it's like really fascinating. And I'm like, this could be a really cool commentary on like dictatorship. Whereas like, yeah, you're out villaining this bad guy, but you're still a bad dude because you're like a dictator who's ruling over the city and doing awful things.
Yeah, man.
But you kept your city safe despite, all these bad things that you do to them.
You want to rule over your city. So
you gotta have a city to rule over, right?
You gotta have a city. You gotta have a citizenry. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious. But like, that's what I'm saying about shades of good and evil, shades of morality. I think that's far more interesting than just like Megamind's actually the good guy now. I think there's more that could have been played with there. However,
plus
that being said, this is still a children's movie.
True. Yeah.
So
can't just have it as like a dictatorship comment.
You can't just leave it with like maybe he is the good guy because he rules over the city a certain way.
No. Hey, I have a question for you.
I have an answer.
Did you notice that this is basically just my pitch for Batman versus Superman?
With Lex Luthor and Superman? Like yours was Batman and Lex Luthor were like friends, and then
and Batman kills Superman, and then this is kind of what plays out afterwards.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, now I have to deal with the city, and now there's other things that I have to contend with, where like obviously it's different.
It's a little bit different, but yeah, I know what you're getting at. I know what you're getting at with the idea that like Batman thought Superman was the shit, and then
yeah. I'm like, this is exactly what I was imagining with like the fall. Not exactly, because there's still like some changes, but like basically what I was imagining with my Batman versus Superman pitch, like the ending.
Did you just pitch Megamind to us for your Batman versus Superman
Apparently.
pitch? Did you mean to do that? Because I swear to God, if you meant to do that.
No, I did not.
That's funny.
But then again, same thing with the end, with the twist of like, oh, Megamind. Metro Man is alive. Yeah. Right? Like, Superman's alive.
Ticked me off that Metro Man was alive at the end.
I saw it coming.
I know it's kind of obvious, but it's also, I was sort of like, when it happens, I was like, but why? Like, it makes everything that Megamind has gone through up until this point kind of superfluous. It's useless. Yeah. Certainly the existential crisis is there, but he didn't win.
Yeah.
He didn't get over the insurmountable odds, you know what I mean? Now, I think what might have worked is, what if Metro Man had come back? Mm-hmm. Like he was alive, fought Titan, and lost.
Oh.
And then Megamind defeated Titan. Because then by transfer of power, it was like, oh, I don't have to defeat Metro Man. Because I beat Titan.
Yeah.
And by, transfer to properties. Yeah, by extension, then I beat Metro Man. And then the two of them could sort of be friends. And then you could sort of get this funny kind of rivalry where it's like, where Megamind is like, yeah, but I defeated Titan. He's like, but you never defeated me, but Titan defeated you. You know what I mean? And they could sort of like have this kind of rivalry where, by extension, it becomes like Megamind didn't defeat Metro Man, therefore he's not the villain. He never killed him, but Metro Man was defeated by Titan and Megamind defeated Titan. Therefore, it feels like he did get over his he reached his goal. Yeah, he climbed that mountain. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I don't know. It was okay.
Well, now I feel bad because my pitch, I didn't really change much in the plot.
That's okay. I was just thinking about like what I changed in my pitch and so here's the thing. I wanted to like this movie, and I did think it was kind of clever, but I got really bored at the end.
I did too.
It gets, once you know where the movie's going to go and who the villain is and how this is going to go, the movie becomes very predictable. Yeah.
And at least with some, like we talked about this last time with Penelope, but sometimes when things are predictable, you can still have fun with it. Like it's the way that they do it that makes it more fun, even though you know what's coming, right? Whereas this one, we kind of We saw through it.
I think the reason that it doesn't work in this movie versus Penelope, in this movie, it's set up as we're going to tell the story from the villain's point of view. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, okay. And then they go through the motions and you're like, okay, where is this going? Where is this going? And then Metro Man dies and he doesn't make it out. And from that point forward, I was like, oh shit, the villain's going to win. Where is this going? I have no idea where this is going to go. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then we sort of like, he's sort of lost and purposeless. And I'm like, okay, where is the movie going to go? I feel like as Megamind doesn't know what it's going to go. But instead of being like, this movie doesn't know where it's going to go, I was like, I don't know where this movie's going to go. But I feel like the movie knows where it's going to go. Mm-hmm. And then as he like creates a new villain, I was like, I actually thought where this was going to go is that he was going to make Roxy into a superhero.
That's what I thought too.
And then it was sort of going to be like, he doesn't know, or she doesn't know that he's Megamind. And he's falling in love with her, and she's like sort of becoming a new hero to fight Megamind. I actually think that would have been really interesting.
I think that would have been really cool to see like how the dynamic between like their relationship would change.
But once he like infects Hal and starts spending time with Roxy, I was like, I know where this is gonna go. And the longer I like watched it play out, the more boring it became. It became beat after beat after beat. And the reason I don't think that worked, as I said, the reason I don't think that worked is because this movie was built upon the subversion of expectations from the very beginning. We're telling the story of a villain. The superhero dies. What is the villain going to do? And then once it's clear that he's going to become the hero, it plays out exactly the same. There's no more subversion.
Yeah.
And I thought the subversion was actually where a lot of the humor was coming from. And once it becomes clear that he's the superhero, there's no more humor. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's still funny, but there's no more humor inherent in the plot. It's just sort of jokes and gags along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is unfortunate. That's why I was like, yeah, I like this premise, but I don't know.
I think it would have been really cool to see Roxy become the hero.
Yeah. And then sort of like have Megamind and Roxy have to fight, and then I think it would have been funnier to have this sort of revelation where Megamind's like, wait a second, maybe I'm not the bad guy.
Yeah.
Or not the bad guy that everyone thought, or that I don't want to be the bad guy, or that everyone sees me as the bad guy.
Yeah.
Because I also thought it was interesting that like, I mean, other than kidnapping Roxy, Megamind hasn't really done anything evil like we talked about. All he's trying to do is defeat Metro Man, and now he's got a new hero that he wants to overcome, but we sort of realize that like, he's not actually a bad dude. Everyone just sees him as bad. And the only reason he became a villain was because everyone thought he was bad. Yep. We saw that at the beginning. Are you smiling because that's your pitch?
We're basically getting into my pitch.
Okay, go for it.
So, I think that Nate would probably be more well suited to talk about this, but I kind of wanted to focus on like framing, like how we frame the characters throughout the movie.
Okay.
So I didn't actually change any of the plot. I just was like, okay, how would I view these things? Or like, how would I change the view of these things to make it look more...
You mean like what your subject is, what your camera's looking at, and what...
Yes, but I would also do it through like cameras in the world rather than like as a film. Like we're getting little bits and pieces of broadcast or like... research videos or whatever,
like street cameras,
security cams, stuff like that. So I would skip the entire intro because we don't really need to know what happened with the pods. Like it's a cool trope, I guess. I like Superman, but it's overdone. So yeah, we don't need to know what happened when you were children, whatever. We can learn about that later in the movie. Like I wouldn't change the plot, but I would, you know me with lore, put it in a little bit. And yeah, so this very start of the movie, we start with the from like the camera's point of view. We're looking at Roxy as she's she's reporting on this unveiling of this museum for Metro Man, and then Megamind actually like hijacks the broadcast right after Metro Man shows up. So the whole thing with Metro Man and Megamind can play out in the same way, but we're seeing it only through like those cameras, like the broadcast from
Megamind.
from Megamind and the one from the building that Metro Man is in.
Yeah.
So we only see like the broadcast. We can hear Roxy in the background after she gets kidnapped. But like we don't actually like see her. So the whole thing plays out the same with the skeleton and everything. And again, we're just seeing it through those broadcasts from those two buildings. But we also get a little bit of like news broadcasts. And then like as we go through the movie, like once Megamind has won, we're seeing it's all just clips, other people framing him. Like, you know, we see the broadcasts of here he is, he just robbed a bank, here he is, he just stole everything from this museum, like all the paintings are gone. So yeah, stuff like that. We only see other people's view of him. Eventually we see that like the dates, there's more space in between certain events because he's getting bored or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we start seeing his recordings of like experiments that he is doing where he's trying to figure out, he's coming up with new things and he's trying to like reignite that spark of passion as a villain, but he's like, you know, nothing's really, you know, hitting the mark here. So he decides, okay, yeah, we'll try kidnapping Roxy because why not?
That's always led to fruitful.
Yeah, because you know, it's good fun, it's funny, it happens, and you know, she can find her way out or something. I don't know. I didn't actually like map out how this would go with the plot, but so basically as he's like doing these recordings and as he does this stupid like theft and stuff, he starts smiling less, he's doing less evil, and then finally he kind of arrives at that same conclusion while he's in the middle of like a video where he's just like, you know, it's kind of boring not having anyone to fight me. Like, I want a little bit of resistance at least.
I'm seeing this as like Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog.
Yeah, where it is kind of like a little bit of like a vlog.
Yeah.
So then we start seeing him actually like go through like navigating, creating a new hero. Through the security footage in his own building, we see Roxy finding her way in, and you know, that whole same thing happens again. We get this time it's a little bit more intimate because it's his own building. It's security cameras where you can see kind of like the panic a little bit more, whereas previously we've only seen him through news broadcasts where he's doing evil things. So let me just find where I am. This is my problem with doing Google Docs. I get lost a little easier.
I'm surprised you're not using your journal anymore. Like your notebooks.
Again, it was a lazy thing. I just didn't want to get up and grab my book.
Oh, okay.
So the point that I'm trying to hammer in with this part is that as he kind of changes as a person, the way that the video or the way that the film frames him like changes
through all the cameras and
through
media.
All the cameras.
Yeah.
So while like Roxy at the same time is recording things of her research of like, what is Megamind going to do next? And like, why is he doing this? And trying to figure things out because she's a reporter. That's what she does. She wants to be able to have all of the knowledge that she needs to when a story breaks, if it breaks. But as those things change and as, you know, Roxy and Megamind start going on dates, not as Megamind, but as what's his name? Bernard. That's what it was.
Bernard.
Yeah. It starts becoming like harder to get good footage of them because he starts kind of leaving his research behind, and while she still does the research, it's not really on when they're together unless they're doing research together. So again, it's kind of those security camera footage where it's like we see like how he's actually acting because he doesn't think anyone's watching because there's no cameras on him. So we see that he's actually like a good guy when there's no camera on him. So the whole thing with Titan happens again. we don't actually see any of how Titan becomes what he is, other than the occasional like recording of like the research video from what was his fish's name? Was it literally just fish? Minion?
He just calls it Minion.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have named it.
I would have named it too. So Minion is the one recording because it's like that silly trope of like space mom.
Yeah.
Space stepmom, whatever it was. It was really goofy.
Yeah.
So she's like, oh, this is like home videos. Like, oh, this is his first flight and oh, first whatever. So we kind of see that a little bit, but not a whole lot. But after his first fight with, or when Megamind finally fights Titan again, we only see it through those news broadcasts again. So we're seeing like once more things are kind of framing him as a bit of a villain. But now we don't know if it's one villain or if it's two villains or if it's a hero versus a villain and who's actually the villain. It's just like, what is going on? There's just this huge fight. Like, we don't know. Is someone rising up against Megamind? Is this just like a test of strength? Like, what's going on?
I like that idea of like, who's the villain and who's the hero from the audience, from the non-audience perspective, like the way that it's framed. Yeah. And then, you know, Titan is being very destructive while he's fighting, whereas Megamind, you know, maybe we've seen in previous broadcasts that he's never been this destructive before. So that's why there's like this, what is actually going on? So after that first fight with Titan, we jump back over to Roxy, where she's recording another research session, trying to figure out exactly like what the heck happened. Like why Megamind would make a new hero or villain or whatever he is, another super person, and exactly like what his goal is and why he tricked her, because we saw from the security footage that they broke up, or at least that there was like that really awkward moment where he accidentally turned back into himself. And so she actually leaves it recording because when she hears the knock, she's like, oh, I know exactly who this is. So she leaves it recording, and so we don't actually see them. We only hear them. Oh, interesting.
As they have a conversation of like, you're the smartest person I know, and you know, I don't understand why Titan turned into this. And then they actually kind of figure it out, but they try not to blame themselves because it's like, oh, well, we didn't know like what kind of a guy he would turn out to be. All that stuff. So then he's like, okay, well, you really knew Metro Man. Can you tell me, like, is there anything I should know to maybe try and beat him? Because now he's not a hero, that's for sure. He's trying to destroy the city. So the whole thing kind of plays out the same. She grabs her gear, her recording gear, so that we can actually see what happens in Metro Man's lair, because that's the only way it would work. They try to learn some potential weaknesses, or anything that they could use against Titan. When they actually see Metro Man, she catches him on camera, and we learn that the death was fake, blah, 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 blah. And he's now happily on the edge of society because he can focus on the things that he likes and doesn't have to deal with the expectations of people just assuming he's going to be a good guy and fighting all the bad guys and keeping the city safe. And he, like, to him, it's like, I didn't like having the cameras on me all the time, and I didn't like, you know, everything that Megamind really liked about being a villain. So now Megamind is kind of like, yeah, you know, I kind of understand it. I want to go back to a somewhat normal life where we're just, you know, fighting and it's just for fun. Like, I don't care about the cameras so much anymore, but it is, at the same time, it's fun.
Yeah.
So then we get a little bit of that falling out, where Megamind leaves. Roxy says goodbye, and then we cut over to like the security cameras in prison where we see Megamind just walk in and give himself up. So after that, we're following Roxy again. She's on her way into Metro City to record the fall of the city. She's like, this is just gonna have to happen, I guess. She's a reporter first, right? Yep. She wants to make sure that even if she can't do anything to save the city, that she's at least recorded the truth. And So she's there. What's his name? Titan, Hal, whatever. Kind of finds him, or finds her, sorry. Sends that same broadcast again to Roxy, or to Megamind. And then like the whole fight kind of plays out the same, but this time we're viewing it again from broadcast. But this time the broadcasts are like, Megamind is standing up to this Titan who has powers like Metro Man, but he's not good like Metro Man. And so like, again, we get that kind of questioning, like, is Megamind good? He's trying to save the city. And then throughout that, we also get a few of those like close-ups with Roxy with her camera. At some point, she like drops her camera. We see a little bit of the fight, and she's like rushing in to help save Megamind, but it's still recording. And then she, at some point, like pulls out her phone because it's like this is the only thing she had left to record. And so she's still trying to get it. That's her goal, right? To be a good reporter. And then after the end of the fight, where we finally like Titan is finally defeated or taken, he loses his power. Roxy puts down the camera, and that's all we see. That's it. And then it's just to the broadcast at the end, where they're celebrating Megamind, and he's just like, "You guys know, like, I'm still gonna rule this city, right?"
Nice.
So he's being celebrated, but there's also still this kind of like worry. But then we also see a large muscular man in the background as he approaches Megamind off stage, while like the mayor is talking or something. And we know it's Metro Man because we've seen him, and we just see them like, they're just good bros.
Yeah, they're bros.
They're bros.
Nice.
So yeah, and they I think it would be really cool to, during the like credits, to have like some extra end scenes where it's just like Megamind like knocks on the door of Metro Man's hideout and is just like, "Hey, I'm kind of bored. Do you want to fight?"
That's funny.
Like, I think that would be pretty funny.
Yeah. Nice. No, I like the way that you do everything with like, it all has to be through camera. So everything is about like how the media portrays who is good and who is evil. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's probably like, even though you didn't change that much, it's really smart because it changes everything.
I wanted it to be smart, but I also had a hard time like how, like, I didn't want to get too crazy with changing the plot because I knew that if I did, then I would just have to spend like 5 hours writing a pitch.
Usually only takes me about an hour to write a pitch.
It took me about maybe an hour and a half for this one.
Yeah. So mine, I changed it so that Roxy was the main character. So it's told from her. So in mine, it's basically the intro is her sort of notes. She goes through some photos of Megamind trying to figure out who he really was. Okay. So it goes through like all about him as a baby coming to Earth, and it looks like he's going to land in this rich house, but he actually lands in the poor part of the city. There's only one pod. It's just Megamind's. And we see as he grows up alongside the Golden Boy, who isn't an alien, but seems to be better at all things and like slowly develops superpowers. And Megamind is, far smarter than everyone. However, because he was raised in like this small place by like a single mom in a poor part of the city, not in a prison, a single mom, poor part of the city, he was still at his disadvantage compared to this Golden Boy who seems to have everything. So they grow up, and the Golden Boy gets into a prestigious college because he can afford it. And even though Megamind is like smarter, he can't afford to go there. And so he winds up at a less prestigious college, but he does some research on cloning, and it's really good. And he gets a job as part of a research facility, but the Golden Boy, who's working in government, buys the research facility and then cuts the funding to the research. And that's when Megamind decides, he's like, okay, no, something has to be done about this. This is bullshit. Yeah. And then the Golden Boy becomes Metro Man. So from here, they do the kidnapping of Roxy the same way, but Roxy is like in comfort the whole time, and like Mega Man and her are like talking about the weather, like they're making small talk, like, "Hey, how have you been? Oh, long time no see. Really? It's only been about a week." Like, you know what I mean? Like since the last time.
Just goofy.
And they're just like shooting the shit and eating lunch because they like know each other that well. Like it's like almost like they don't really know each other. They just talk to each other is what I mean.
Yeah.
And she knows Metro Man will save her, and he basically is only like using her to get at Metro Man. And then so Metro Man like shows up and he's in the observatory, and that whole part plays out the same. But the blast goes off without needing to warm up, and Metro Man is caught in it. But he's caught in it, and it looks like he's gonna die. And Megamind is like, yes! But at the last minute, he escapes, and he shows up to save Roxy. But Megamind was ready the whole time and shoots him with his simple freeze gun that he just had on his in his hand the whole time. It just boom, shoots him with a freeze gun and actually kills him. And while he's on his way to the city, Megamind is basically just like, hey, Roxy, where should I drop you off? Like, I don't actually want to harm you. I just needed you to get at Metro Man, and now that I've got at Metro Man, I don't need you. So like, you just pick a place and I'll drop you off. And she can be in shock, and he can just be like, hello, like, I'll just drop you off at the city hall. That seems to be a good place. You know what I mean? But she's in shock. Megamind then takes over the city, and his new regime, everything is all dark and gloomy, and he like repaints all the flags to be like blue and black instead of gold and yellow, or gold and white. And the next day the citizens wake up, but the city isn't destroyed. Just all the flags have changed color, and there's a regime change. And Megamind, Roxy begins reporting, like, everyone's like, what's Megamind going to do? It's going to be change the regime. And like, you know, she's reporting on all these things, and everyone's super worried because nobody has any idea how Megamind's going to do things. And as time goes on, from the reporting perspective, nothing's happening. Things are pretty much the same. And except for a couple times when the military showed up and Megamind had to like bat them away with his robot army. Which was fine, but like the media frames it as he's still like taken over as this like dictator, like you said. But as time goes on, we start to see like small changes that Megamind's making. Like he's changed the way banks are run, and now he's also changed like more social programs. And all of a sudden, like Roxy is doing this like fluff piece on a new music program that's been put into for like, you know, kids and after school music programs, and she's like, what the actual fuck is Megamind doing, like, as a government? Yeah. It feels like nothing has changed, except there's, like, more social programs and whatnot. And so Roxy is like, okay, I'm going to get an interview. She goes to her boss and is like, I want to get an interview with Megamind. And the police and reporters are like, no, it's too dangerous. He's an evil villain. But she's like, well, let's just see how this plays out. And he's actually like, yes, I will do your interview. That sounds really, really good. And she shows up and interviews him, and it's not live. It's just like she's just recording with a dictaphone or her phone or whatever, and they basically talk about how he grew up, and he says like things were really, really difficult. Like I grew up with a single mother, and we had to really, really work hard. She had to work hard to support me, even though I was already that smart. Like we couldn't afford a lot of things, and even though the interview was only supposed to be like an hour of her getting her gaining information, they wind up like talking for a really, really long time. And Megaman is sort of really amused. He's like, I spent so much time trying to beat Metro Man that I hadn't really like had time to make friends or stay in touch with my old friends or like date or anything. And now I'm just like really, really busy trying to figure out how to make the world a better place, which is what I've always been trying to do. And Metro Man's been trying to stop me this whole time. Also, super like sorry for kidnapping you all the time, but like I knew Metro Man had a thing for you, so it was easy to like get him to come after you. And like I know that's gross, but like I'm sorry that I did that. It was like a means to an end, but I do apologize. And he's like really well spoken and like actually really funny and kind of goofy. And and he basically is like the first battle that they decide to like meet up again. Like Roxy and Megamind decide that they're like, oh, we should talk again. And so they show up again, and this time he tells her all about the first battle that he had with Metro Man, where he was like, I realized that I couldn't make the world a better place from inside the system, so I would do it from outside the system. So I began to try to tear down this old factory using some of my robots and create a park there because no one was using the land. But then Metro Man showed up and was like, a bank owns this land and is holding it in the hopes that its value might be worth something one day, so you're trespassing. And Megamind was like, yeah, but nobody's using it. Like even if we don't own the land, like a park would be better than a factory. And Metro Man was like, no, you don't own the land. This is trespassing, justice, and all that. And so they fought. And that's sort of like where the whole thing started. And Roxy's like really impressed. She's like, they seem to like each other. But Megamind is like super busy and realizes, you know, he's got a lot to do because he's trying to like change the government and whatnot and like how capitalism works. So we can have a montage of the two of them spending time together, and Roxy starts to question like maybe she has feelings for Megamind, but he seems like a cool dude. But she's like also putting together details on her report before she's going to do like a live interview with him and like talk about everything, and it'll be like a full broadcast and whatnot. But the higher ups and her boss are basically like, whoa, you can't put that story out because you don't know the truth yet about Megamind is actually ruining the economy. He's like changed the banks in small ways. He's running the government into the ground. It's terrible stuff. Like, you need to look into every side. And so Roxy's alarmed. She's like, oh yeah, like he is a villain. Maybe I should do some more digging. So she starts following the leads that her boss gave her. But now that evening, she's also going out on like her first official date with Megamind. Ooh. And they're like going out, but she doesn't want to tell him about the fact that she's following some leads on him because she doesn't want him to not trust her. Like, she doesn't want him to think that she doesn't trust him and think that he's also a good person. And he did also like kill Metro Man, so she's like, I'm conflicted. Like, I don't know what's going on here. Like, he still killed a dude, and he's a villain. Like, it's really complicated. And also, I'm supposed to be a reporter. Like, everything's getting kind of weird and messed up. So while having dinner, Metro Man shows up. Yeah. And he starts attacking Megamind. And he's like, give back the city. And Megamind's like, but I defeated you. And he's like, you could never defeat me. Like, I'm Metro Man. Like, you're the villain. And Roxy's like, but actually, like, I think he might be making the world a better place. Like, I'm not certain. I haven't found all the leads, but he could be making the city a better place. And Metro Man's like, that's impossible. Like, he's Megamind. He's a villain. That's just the way things are. So we get a big action scene unfold. And then this time, Megamind is like actually saving Roxy and solving collateral damage. Because he never actually wanted to put Roxy in any danger. She was never in danger. Like, I wouldn't have all the spike traps or drills or anything like that because it's not worth it to Megamind. Yeah. He was only using it to get at Metro Man. So Megamind is victorious. Like, he defeats Metro Man again, only to have Metro Man appear as if from nowhere and defeat him.
Oh, no.
Yeah, like a last minute thing. So things return to normal in the city. Megamind is forced to retreat to his secret lair. Nobody knows where he is in. He's in hiding, and everything goes back to normal in Metro City. So Roxy continues to follow the lead about Megamind, and now realizing that, Metro Man stopped Megamind, he must have been bad. And she discovers something crazy, but we don't see what it is because she rushes off to find Megamind.
Okay.
So Megamind is in his lair. He's looking over camera footage, and he sees that Megamind is just like straight up appears from the opposite direction of where he was defeated. And he's like, that's not possible because teleportation and duplication are not one of his 999 powers. And I would love to have like Megamind have like a book cataloging all of Metro Man's powers. Because cool. I just think that would be funny. Yeah. So Roxanne then shows up, and we're going to have a funny scene where she finds a secret entrance because I think that would be funny. And what she reveals is that the lead she'd been given by her bosses was basically to try and bury her story so that she couldn't tell the world that Megamind was actually doing some really, really good things from some people's perspective. So it turns out that basically it was a false lead. They handed her a false lead because a lot of the people that work for the news, or that the newscast like hires, or in the news business and the government, they thought that what Megamind was doing was actually hurting how much they were making money, how much they were, able to continue being a quote unquote ruling class. So it turns out that the way they had done this is that the lead actually led her to something else, which she dug up. Turns out that Megamind had actually been defeating Metro Man for years and years, over and over again. And the government and some corporations had created Metro Man as a child as like a super soldier program. And then the cloning thing that Megamind had done when he was after college, they had acquired it through purchase, shut it down so that they could basically make more super soldiers quickly. And they've been cloning Metro Man over and over again. So every time that Megamind had defeated Metro Man, he was actually killing a clone, and then a new clone was sent in to replace it.
What?
Yeah. And they couldn't have like public knowledge about it. So that's how they've been doing it. So yeah. So what happened is when he used the Sunray satellite beam to kill Metro Man, they sent in the clone immediately so it looked like he would escape. And then Megamind used his freeze ray to stop Metro Man again. What they hadn't prepared for is they didn't have another clone ready that quickly. So that's why it was a couple of days before the new clone showed up with new memories implanted that just, Megamind was bad because that's what they needed him to be so that he couldn't change the status quo. He couldn't basically make the world a better place so that the ruling class couldn't continue to profit off of the misery of others, the way that Megamind grew up. So basically Megamind is like, so there's no way I could ever win. Every time that I would do something to defeat him, they would just replace him with a clone. Even if I defeated a whole clone army, which I don't even know that I could do, they'd just replace him. So it's like, I don't know what to do. I can't, how do I do this? So Roxy's like, don't worry, I've got another plan. Here's what we're going to do. And then they cut away. So Megamind actually gives himself and goes to jail because he did actually do a bunch of bad things. And he's like, yeah, I guess I did kill a bunch of people and rob a bunch of banks and whatnot and try to, break down what was the status quo, but I did it through illegal means. So I should pay for that. That's just the right thing to do. So he goes to jail. And what Roxy does is a live interview with him on camera, being like, I want you to explain why you gave yourself up back to prison and why you did all these things. And what she also does is reveal all of the shit that they uncovered about Metro Man and the stuff about the government and the city and whatnot. And they release that all live on camera as a news report. And then a bunch of people in the city who were happy with the way that Megamind was running things, they're like, whoa, they're fed up with this. And they start to march towards City Hall, and they're using Megamind's logo, which wouldn't be his head, but they're using Megamind's logo and his colors as basically a kind of rallying symbol. And that's the end.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, I'm just trying to push for more social change, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I'd really struck by what Nate had said about superhero movies are all about reinforcing the status quo. Mm-hmm.
But the status quo isn't always good.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think the status quo is good, and I think sometimes it requires some drastic change in order to quote unquote fix or at least improve upon. But I think there are those in power that don't want that to be improved upon. So that's why I thought well, hang on a second. This is a story about class. Metro Man was given everything, and Megamind had nothing. And yet Megamind was smarter and superior and had ideas about how to make the world a better place. But he was the villain simply because he had to do things from outside the system. Otherwise, he couldn't make them work. And he did do some bad things because he's a dissident. He's a civil dissident, social dissident, political dissident. Yeah.
No, I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot, actually.
That one's for you, Nate.
Kind of brings me... Yeah. That also kind of brought me back to learning about the different, takeovers from my modern dictatorship class. So that worked really well.
I think the idea of framing him as a villain simply because he wants to do something that's against the status quo is really interesting. It's the same idea that we often talk about, are you a rebel insurgent group or are you terrorists? You know what I mean? Are you a resistance or are you... Yeah, those kinds of things. So, and I think that's a much more interesting way to explore morality rather than just good versus evil in a superhero movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then it also brings up the question of is it better to follow the rules or is it better to do, I guess, things for the greater good? And, which one is better?
Yeah, it's hard to say.
The rules are in place for a reason, but is the reason really that good?
Yeah. Is it to promote those who are already in power or make
the things that you're trying to do for the quote unquote greater good, are they actually good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this movie has a lot of smart things in it. I don't know. At the end I was starting to get bored with it, which is unfortunate.
I mean, it's got Megamind in it. That's pretty smart.
I guess. Yeah. Boo. Any last minute thoughts about Megamind?
No. I really like this. I actually had a lot of fun watching it until the end where I was like, okay.
I had more fun pitching it. I had more fun.
I did. I had a lot of fun. Yeah.
And where can people find you?
You can find me at twitch.tv/Alyssa Lou with 3 O's, or you can find my handmade stuff at Alyssa Rose. Wait, I just messed that up. It's Alyssa Lou with 3 O's for Twitch.
Yep.
And Alyssa Rose handmade on Instagram.
There you go. Even I have it memorized now. You can find our band Robot Philosopher anywhere you listen to dope music. Actually, we just released a brand new track. You should check it out. It's very cool. It's called Prosthesis. You can also check more episodes of this podcast on Cinecasters and more of our scripted content over on the Cinemasters Ultimate Timeline. Thanks for chilling with us.
Bye.